I'm going to call the meeting. There you go. I'm going to be calling the meeting to order. So we're going to be calling the meeting to order, folks. So are we okay with Channel 17? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so the first order of business on our agenda is a review of the minutes from October 15th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So I move approval of the minutes of October 15th, 2024 with corrections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll go through it. Page 1.
So on all of the pages, there are when the motions that are made,
Yes.
notice that it's 5-0 for the vote. It should be 4-0 in the 5 places.
Yep.
I also think that anytime it says seconded by Greta D'Agostino, I actually think it was Jean who seconded. I think for the minutes, I think you.
Really?
Yeah.
Remember?
I believe. I'm not positive. I do not think I did it.
You were chairing.
I was sharing, exactly. So,
True, good one.
yes. So there's a couple places where it says I seconded, but yeah.
Okay. Page 2. Page 3. So, subject to those modifications, all those in favor say aye.
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 And one abstention. I abstain, I was not here. Okay. Next on the agenda, public comment. This is a moment where anybody can make a public comment to the select board. It does not have to be something that's on the agenda. It can be if you wish. But is there anybody in the room who wishes to make a public comment? Hey. Not to be too formal, if you can state your name and go from there.
My name is Krista Provost. I'm here today because I spoke with Eric Wells about the Williston Police Barracks and the right of first refusal, and I know there's been a lot of discussion and articles kind of about that, and I'm really interested in being a part of the discussion and the process, and I'm here hopefully to learn more about what the process will entail and how members from the town can kind of engage in the process and whether it could be added as a separate agenda item for a future meeting.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Eric, is there anybody online?
Nope, no one online.
Okay. Next, liquor license application, Toscano LLC. So,
And this will be for a first and a third class application for a new restaurant.
okay. And you feel free to remain standing, but you can sit down if you want to.
Hopefully it won't be too long-winded. My name is Max Faith, and I'm a resident here again in Williston, Vermont. I grew up in this town. My family owned Toscano Cafe Bistro in Richmond, Vermont from 2003 to 2017, and I am applying for a first and third class liquor license to reopen the family brand in the former Shayar's Williston location at 32 Cottonwood Drive. I think that's all I got.
Okay. Eric, has staff reviewed it?
Yeah, that's no objections from staff.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Is this all just for inside consumption?
Oh, thank you. I am applying also for an outdoor patio permit, so I don't know if it's on that liquor license. I apologize for my novice business handlings, my first go around.
No outdoor consumption permit just yet. After you get your permit from the town, then we can pursue that for the outdoor seating.
So it would be for an indoor 100-seat restaurant, and the next step would be for a 30 outdoor seat patio.
Is this are you going to be occupying the full, junior's space and junior sidebar, or just the?
Yep, I've taken on 2/3 of their commercial real estate, so I have just shy of 6,000 square feet, 5,750.
Okay.
It entails the 2 dining room spaces. The sidebar space being what is going to be my main 100-seat dining room with the patio off the back side of that.
Great.
The original 50-seat dining room will be used as a banquets and event space, but not for normal dining.
Okay.
Other questions?
No, I'm excited.
I know.
New place to go eat. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, is there a motion?
Sorry?
I move to approve a third-class and first-class liquor license for Toscano LLC.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Okay, great. So you're all set.
All right.
Thank you.
Catch up with you all soon.
Thank you and welcome to business in Williston.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
So next up, community project fund projects. So Eric, if you could do a brief introduction.
Sure. So, we continue discussion from, for several meetings, looking at the ARPA funds, now the community project funds. Board's been considering how to allocate those funds. Following up on discussion from last meeting, I updated the listing just with some more bullet points for each one to have it on a one-pager for the board. And then a couple memos included, looking at the Industrial Avenue pedestrian bridge project and also the fire department future planning items, follow up on discussion from last meeting. For the Industrial Avenue pedestrian bridge, Bruce is here to answer any project-based questions. $690,000 request with the current estimate for the project, an additional $210,000 from the sewer fund. It's been determined the best approach for us to look at is to have a separate bridge, not have a separate bridge rather for the sewer main bridge, and instead attach that to the pedestrian bridge. There may be some additional funds from the sewer fund that can be utilized as a result. Our engineers for the project are looking at that, and we could make a further determination once we have that project information for that scope. I put in my memo and thinking about potential other ways to fund the project, just some general notes and thinking about other funds that are available, and just some general thoughts here. Our current operating budget, it's pretty early in the fiscal year, so I don't, working with our finance director, have a good sense if we're gonna have, a variance there we could look at to utilize towards this project. Capital budget as well, the budget's a bit tight right now. We're facing some pressure this year and next year. Reductions from the revised budget are affecting that a bit. Our unassigned fund balance, we're currently working to close FY24 and have the audit underway, so I can't give an accurate number of where that is exactly right now, just from where numbers we had from last spring when we did the revised budget. Then there is a piece in statute for short-term borrowing. Under state statute, a select board can borrow funds for 5 years or less for an infrastructure project like a bridge or a road. So there's those elements.
Without going to the public, is that?
Yeah, it allows, I think it has to be 5 years or less for the term of for the borrowing, and probably be most likely a bank note to pursue there.
Right.
I think I'll just pause there, and Bruce is here as well, answer any questions the board has. If that's how you want to kind of approach these project by project with kind of updates and summaries, or?
That was my thought, but what is the board's?
I just had a question on this. So changing the design of the bridge didn't save any money? It's still the same amount?
For right now, we feel that's the most conservative approach. I know once we get the design back, there'll be other costs. I was chatting with Bruce about it today, where if we need to move that sewer line temporarily, we might need to have a temporary pump station in place, and there's going to be added costs there. So we'll have a better sense once we get that estimate from the engineers. They're making sure that this approach will be feasible. We preliminarily sense that it will, but we need final confirmation on that approach.
Okay, so the memo is really we might be changing the design, but it really didn't affect anything that would affect my decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think for right now, using the same numbers we have are the best. What we feel most comfortable with.
And we're $250,000 short, right? So when I read this, subtotal of projects is 1.57, and we have 1.32.
Oh, for all of them, you mean?
I'm just looking at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to discuss them total, or did you want to discuss them like project by project?
Well, I'm wondering if we're ready to discuss them at all, given that our bond failed for the parking lot. We might have to rethink the use of these funds entirely, so I'm a little bit,
Yeah.
I was just making sure that, I would love to say, yes, let's do them all, boom,
Yeah.
done, but now we need $250,000, which
Right.
we don't have. So
Yeah.
then we get into
Yep.
having to make decisions between things, and I don't know that I know how much we could potentially have to, we might have to potentially add money to the parking lot if we still want to do that project.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, at least in terms of the Industrial Avenue Bridge, just like, not looking at the others, but looking in terms of that, you know, in thinking about kind of some of the town goals in terms of walkability and, you know, our energy committee's goals. The sidewalks are about to be finished soon to connect us all the way through South Burlington, which I see as a big win for our town and for South Burlington. I do see at minimum this as a you know, top tier priority, and I know that your concern had been that this was above and beyond kind of what we had initially kind of allocated for the public works, but I do think this ticks a lot of our community oriented goals and our town plan goals, even though it was you know, to replace something that had already existed. So personally, you know, I've had a lot of time to think about the old brick church and kind of your thoughts on that, and I think I've come around to actually your way of thinking, but I do see that Industrial Avenue Bridge as something that we really should take action on sooner rather than later, even if we don't work through the others, if we pull those off.
Yeah, and I would have to say, just to clarify my position, I think it's also a super important project
Yeah.
that needs to happen. I
Yeah.
just know that if we didn't have ARPA money, we would find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So using up basically half of the money that we have left, when we would have found a way to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, this kind of emergency is why we have a fund balance.
Mhm.
Exactly, so do we need to use all of it, was really my question last time,
Yeah.
not do we need to do it.
Right.
I absolutely think it's,
Right.
of all this list, is probably the top priority.
Yeah.
Do we need to do it all?
Yeah, I think my concern with taking the money from any other pool, though, is that we took a significant chunk this year, much more than in years past, from the fund balance, to kind of make the budget more workable and more passable. And so I hesitate taking more from the fund balance. While, yes, that is the intention, I think that using this money for that project ultimately is going to accomplish the same goals, because it is going to come from somewhere else in the town. It's going to come from the fund balance, but, you know, we're taking a little bit from here to you know, to avoid it, you know, ultimately, you know, we're gonna pay for it all somewhere in the town, and this way, you know, it's being done, and we're not at risk of affecting our tax rate.
But the fund balance is where it's supposed to be right now. We're not below. It's within that range that we were given.
Yeah, as I recall, our projection for the end of FY '25, if we needed to use it all, was around 14%, and that range is 10 to 20. But leading into FY '26 budget and thinking about, I think it was about 700,000 utilized from the fund balance in FY '25. Using that level again next year, that most likely needs to be stepped down, because it won't be sustainable to fill in that revenue gap over time. So we're trying, this is coming at a time we're trying to project that for FY '26 and trying not to,
No.
looking at all these different elements at play, I guess I'll say.
It is really funny, Greta, because you know me, I'm always saying, like, money is money, it's fungible. right?
Yeah.
It's money.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if we use the ARPA money for the bridge, and then we do a fund balance,
Yeah.
are we gonna use the fund balance for discretionary items that are on this list? No, we're not.
No.
Right.
No. Yeah, and so my thinking with part and parcel, because then I also thought, you know, about I was thinking about the old brick church, and again, you know, your thoughts on that, and I thought, you know.
That was a question last time.
It was a question, but I think that was legitimate, and I think that there may be other avenues that we should pursue, you know, maybe before we, you know, go forth with using that funding for this, but that's just me.
Could you explain the difficulty with that we take the money out of, out of ARPA funds. But if we didn't have the ARPA funds, we'd take them out of the fund balance, so therefore we shouldn't take them out of the ARPA funds, because if the ARPA funds didn't exist, we'd take them out of the fund balance? Why is that a thing?
I didn't understand what you just asked me.
Well, why, you said if we didn't have the ARPA funds, we would have found a way to pay for it.
Right.
I don't mean to be flip, but my thought is, so what? Why does that make a difference?
I was just asking, we originally had $500,000 on here for a completely different project. And then this one came along, which was more important, and we had $500,000 on it. And then the next time I saw it, it was $690. I said, well, that's why we ran out of money. I thought we were really close to having a solution, but now we're $250,000 short, and it's because the bridge got more expensive. So I had asked at the last meeting, is there another way to fund that differential? So we could go back to the list we've been working with for 6 months.
Okay,
And that's where that came from. And,
okay, thank you.
Eric was gonna go back and look, and if we can't fit it in the operating fund, if we can't reprioritize within the operating budget, it's just another idea.
Yeah.
But we don't have to do that, it's just that it is, but my point of being is that when I first got on this board and you guys were talking about the ARPA money, a lot of it was like, we should use this to do things that we may never get another opportunity to do.
Yeah.
Like the old brick church sprinkler system, or the gazebo, or all these things that we would never get the opportunity to do, except that we have this money to do it with. But now we're gonna use it to repair a bridge. So it's that wasn't the intent when we started talking about it.
Yeah,
I think, well, oh,
but we didn't know the bridge was gonna break.
yeah.
There's everything that's gonna go wrong in the town, right? You guys got a lot, we got a lot of infrastructure.
But that's more hypothetical. The bridge is real. The bridge does need to be fixed.
Right.
And thinking too a little bit about kind of things that, elements that have changed since then too. I think that we've seen with town meeting day, you know, with our budget not being passed, with other national and state elections, that, you know, reprioritizing, keeping the tax rate as low as we can possibly get it is a priority for people in this town. And so while our goal had initially been stated to do some of these projects that, again, might not otherwise get done, you know, we'll have to maybe reconsider if the town is not more interested in, you know, getting some of these things that, yes, we may have otherwise found the money within the town budget, but, you know, if we use this money for, it could potentially help to keep that tax rate lower.
Okay, well, I'll come around to your point of view then too.
Yeah, I believe that using the ARPA funds to save taxpayer money is important. We're using it for a public service project. You know, it's filling a need versus a want. I think we need to look at the needs first. I mean, that's what the voters have said in the town, statewide and nationwide. The economy is number one. So
I think we need to reassess the parking lot issue entirely. If we're not gonna do it, we have $200,000 in ARPA funds put there. So that's one of the things. I think my own thought is to fund the bridge project right now, because it's a danger. It's not gonna get any better. If you drive across there and there's a big truck coming at you, it's scary. And then if we do that, we can take a look at the rest of the things on the list and reprioritize them.
Is there anything else on the list that's urgent? Because we probably need a little bit of time to think about the parking lot.
I would say the bridge is the most urgent priority here. Other things like the park pavilion, there's a lead time for ordering that to get that installed next spring. I know that one board was supportive of that. We're just waiting for the final number. I think my original estimate from Todd was 105, and it's 110 is what his final order number is on the purchase order there. And we'll talk a little bit about the fire future planning as well. And that's something that probably if the vendor wouldn't get started till early next year. But there's only one broken thing on this list, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think like the Industrial Avenue Bridge is the one that I feel like is the most time sensitive. And again, given yesterday's results, I think it would behoove us to take the time to reflect and maybe reconsider, maybe some of, not the entire list. We worked really hard to get on this list, but to factor in the parking lot, that something does still have to be done. That is a major safety issue in our town. So, yeah.
Actually, I stand corrected in my last comment. It's our other bridge that having an issue, the Nature
Yes.
Trail Bridge
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So Greta, would that lead us to make a decision on the Industrial Avenue pedestrian bridge tonight and then subtract that off the list and then reassess everything else?
That's how I see. Yeah, that's what I see.
I agree.
I'll agree.
Okay. All right, so, and actually, so you brought up the Nature Trail Bridge. Is that, I'm sorry I've lost track, but have we approved that already, or we have not?
No,
Okay. All right, that is an issue that I get stopped and asked about more than other stuff. So just, but I don't think we need to take action on it tonight. So if that's the case, is the board comfortable with somebody making a motion about the Industrial Avenue Bridge? And we'll check that off, or do we want to keep talking about it?
I can attempt wording and language. I'll move to approve $690,000 of community project funds towards the Industrial Avenue pedestrian bridge.
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. Motion carries.
the other component of the board would consider is to use the $210,000 from the sewer fund net position to round out the project.
We need to vote on that too, or?
I'd suggest it just to have the funding allocated.
All right. I will also move to use $210,000 from the sewer fund for the sewer components of the Industrial Avenue Bridge.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. It passes. Okay.
The other pieces on the community projects fund, if you wanted to discuss the parking lot a little bit tonight, Bruce and I had a chat about that today, and then
Yeah.
Yep.
It might be as an initial thing, I think.
if you want to chat up. You want to come up first? No.
I'm getting out of here while they're getting good.
Yeah, you gotta take it and run, Bruce.
So, because of the parking lot bond not passing, as Eric said, we spoke about it today with Shirley, actually, and also looking at funding. But what I did was looked at, let's just say all we have is $400,000, $200,000 from the grant, and $200,000 from the Community Development Fund. And what that would mean, so all I did was take what the expansion to the parking lot was going to be, deducted that. So the area that's left is still about 81% of that total that we were talking about before. Basically taking what we already have out here and just rebuilding it, not adding any more parking spaces, but doing the lights, you know, improving the drainage, getting the paving done, those kind of things. I mean, there's some concrete work in the other one that wouldn't happen by just rehabbing what we have out here. So I came out with, and these are very rough numbers, I don't want anybody to think that, I have asked the engineers that put this together for us to provide us with other numbers, but that wasn't happening today. So I came out with a total of about $453,552 just to rebuild what we have
Can you-
out there today.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
453,552. That's just the construction cost. That's not the contingencies then on top of that, which you always have with any project like this. And after you put those numbers, the bottom line is about $565,000. Once again, that's rebuilding what we have, not gaining any extra space, but making the improvements out here to the drainage and the lighting. Probably still get conduits in the ground. That does not include EV stations. Certainly the conduit could go in for it, but it doesn't include putting any of that in. We have to go back and look at the grant to make sure that we can do some of this stuff yet. But that's, once again, just to rebuild what we have. That's the number we're looking at.
So an additional 165,000
On top.
roughly on top of what we already have.
Right.
Okay, just, and that's,
And
again,
$552.
what'd you say?
Don't forget the 500.
Of the five,
Yeah. That's a great
25
number.
cents.
We'll get that
Rough number is
Rough number is
$453 and $552, not 551, not 550.
That's why it's rough.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I brought my hat.
and so in thinking about, you know, in the community project funds, I mean, you know, some of these items that, you know, are again, like, the things that we'd love to have, and then some of this is a safety issue, so we have to, you know, we may wanna think about, you know, the wants versus needs issue and use of our funds here.
We can do is get the firm number from the engineer. We can
Yeah.
report back to the board as you
Yeah.
think about
And
this. The grant's not going away anytime soon. I think it's a 2026 deadline. It's a 20% match on it, so the 200,000 that's all been allocated is an overmatch for what we need to do. I was reviewing an email exchange in May with the state on that this afternoon, and the town can put in an amended budget to that project, and you know, if the scope changed potentially without the expansion, we would put an amendment in, make sure that got approved by the state to still activate that grant money. Debt authority wise, the town couldn't ask a reconsideration of a bond for another year. There's a 12-month waiting period after you vote on a bond twice in a year.
I'm sorry, what was the 20%? 20% of the total cost was what the grant was awarded as?
Yeah, of the grant, $200,000 grant, so you have to have at least a match of 20% of that, of $40,000. And
Oh, match.
yeah, 200,000 that's been allocated previously by the board tentatively for the project, if that was applied, would cover that match and some.
So we have no problem meeting the match.
No, not at all. It would just be a question of if the scope changes to make sure that amendment was approved by the state before we hit go on the project.
It's nice when the state will, I guess, all of us are paying for the 200K.
So would it make sense to stop the discussion about the community project funds at this time, because we're gonna have to wait for the official number there and reassess what our priorities are with everything else on the list? Or is there other progress that we can make on it tonight?
I think we need to reassess, so.
Okay. Is that the consensus?
Yeah.
Okay.
The fire chief is here too, get the follow-up on discussion on that element from last meeting.
Okay, yeah, let's hear from the chief, and then I think we'll move on to the next item. So, thanks, Bruce.
Yep, thank you.
If I could just kind of lead it off. The other memo for me in your packet is looking at the fire department future planning project. We presented a community-based strategic plan and a master plan and potential impact fee project that discussed the last few meetings, last couple of months. So I provided for you some examples, Chief Collette was able to get of plans from communities that have utilized it the last year or so. And there's another option to consider, just doing a community-based strategic plan as a starting point, and then maybe reevaluate and consider a master plan further on. I'll just turn to Chief.
So I think Gene, I heard you loud and clear, and so we did reach out to the vendors to try to get a little bit better number, a more realistic number. And to Manager Wells' point, that strategic plan, plus or minus about just the strat plan itself, is about 20,000. So it's a much different number than you see here with the master plan included in it.
What, you told me the difference between the strategic plan and the master plan?
So the strategic plan is that short term, that 3 to 5 year. That master plan is more of that long term, people, places, apparatus, talking about, it's really the electorate and the executive branch here of the town being actively involved in what the future of the fire department is going to look like for out to maybe 20 years. Where the strategic plan will be about service delivery, operations,
Sure.
how we deliver things. It allows us to have some ownership from the ground up, both in the community side and the internal stakeholders, as the firefighters themselves get to actually contribute to the ideas of what the future of the fire department looks like. So we take the badges off. There is no rank in that event, and everybody gets to have their say. And I'll say this, is that in today's society, I have a number of years in the fire department. I was looking at the math the other day, and it's greater than 30. And if the math is correct, it may be actually 35. So what I'm realizing is, right, today's fire department's different. And so for us to be successful, it can't be just my opinion, right? It can't be all my experience. We've got to adapt to the community which we serve. And this strategic plan allows for that. It allows both internally for our members, like the new hires, right? I'd love to discover the key to success on retention of employees. And part of that, I think, is having their buy-in, if they get to contribute. So this would be an instrument for them to be involved in that. The second part would be, like we spoke of last meeting, was what does the community want of their fire department? Times have changed, right? We're not just a fire suppression agency. We're really an all hazards agency that needs to adapt to whatever 911 call is coming in next. And we can do that, but I would rather be ahead of that curve and have the input of the people we serve than to react to that and saying, hey, we didn't foresee this coming. As an example, lithium-ion batteries. We've had those fires in our community. Electric vehicle crashes. How do we mitigate electric vehicle crashes? So these are things that are changing around us, and we as a fire department have to be able to adapt to that. Part of that strategic plan is involving that, getting that ownership and that buy-in from both the community and our firefighters. So. The two things that I don't even think Manager Wells knows, the price does change after January 1, so the offer that's used, the tentative offer that there's out there, that price does go up. And the second thing is, one of the vendors that provided the example, if you looked in there, they provided a management, their MIG, their implementation guide. So it's not just a strat plan, it's a roadmap on how to achieve that strategic plan. And so that, I felt, was a comprehensive document and really provided good guidance for us internally to say, all right, hey, we spent the money on it, and here's how you're going to do it. So I thought that was a good option for us.
I was actually going to note that I was really impressed with that, the implementation guide. That was excellent, and that, to me, really highlights the value of, this work would, be to have that plan to go forward with. So.
The police plan, all of a sudden, I can't remember the name of it. That was a strategic or a master plan?
I don't know if it fit in one of those whole, buckets. It was a lot of, it was heavy on the staffing analysis. I would see it more. We didn't have necessarily the same approach for the internal stakeholders. There's a lot of stakeholder interviews from the consultant. So I probably a hybrid between kind of a strategic plan and a staffing analysis.
And you know, we see the South Burlington and the Hartford Fire Department strategic plan, and there's no master plan. And if we had a public safety impact fee, would we need, with the strategic plan and the plan that we already have on the police force, would that qualify us for this public safety impact fee? Or would we need another plan on the police department as well?
I think on the police department, I think we have, thinking about the growth with the different division we're talking about, we have a good sense there of the needs for equipment. But I think on the fire EMS side, that's where some additional master planning would be necessary, because I think part of that is looking at the facility and thinking about that need as well. I think from the strategic plan, we won't have those questions answered. We need more of that kind of larger master plan, which was you know, apparatus, people, and services. Did I get that right, Chief?
Places.
There, yeah, places. So this can certainly build, you know, this initial step can build towards that, but I think for an exercise like this, with the complexity the town is facing, we need more just focused master planning on the fire EMS side, and we can complement that with what we've done on the police side.
I would like to, I'd be happy with starting with a strategic plan and holding off on the master plan a little bit. Because my understanding from what you were saying last time, Chief, is that we sort of have our arms wrapped around the fire part of your department, but maybe not EMS as much as we'd like. And this would be
AP Triton really focused on staffing, right? They focused on immediate need for staffing. There were some other suggestions in there. This, the AP Triton study was not something that really reached out to any stakeholder group. It was a data analysis of the current situation, right? So this strat plan would actually give you other sides with a little bit more depth. So.
Just wondering, you know, I'm just wondering what it's gonna cost us to have a public safety impact fee. If this is that's our ultimate goal, is it gonna require us to have?
Yeah, kind of working backwards to get there. You have to have a good sense of what the capital needs are based on that impact, that community growth for services. So we're trying to working through, you know, that process to understand operationally what level of service the town's going to provide, what capital needs that we don't have today based on future impact would be needed to then provide that service, and then you have to calculate your fee based on those capital needs moving ahead.
So that's really another discussion from what we're going, this discussion here.
Yeah, I'd say so. You know,
This is more
looking
about-
for this initial strategic plan step, and then after this is completed, thinking kind of that, I'm sure we'll learn a lot from this, and then we can think more about what that master plan, potential public safety impact fee looks like. But you know, if the board's interested in funding this as a first step, I think it's a good way to move forward with the planning element. We'll learn from this, and then we can figure out kind of what the next proposal would be for the board to consider.
So what you're asking is for a $20,000 strategic plan fee cost?
Yep.
Theoretically, like, as part of like the implementation guide for the strat plan, it would be to get a master plan to then create, like, you know, within that 3 to 5 year time, get a master plan done to get a public safety impact fee ideally in place.
I think none of us want to be in the situation we were at when we contracted with AP Triton, right? That was, it was an eye-opener to all of us, and I think that's what having a plan, this master plan in place for is, you know, helps identify triggers when, and if it's either call volume or the growth of the community, however, whatever is identified in that would help be those, identify the need and the capital needs going forward.
So what's the board's pleasure on this issue? Do we put it on the list and talk about it at the next meeting, or seeing one person nodding? Okay.
So I mean,
We thought we would have a pretty good number on the parking lot before the end of this year. And I would say maybe we wait, just because I feel a little bit like, you know, like taking little nibbles, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we only had that.
Yeah.
So if we don't think we're gonna have a good number until like March, I'm not gonna hold this up that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus the price goes up at the end of the year.
Yeah, and have the price go up.
What does,
We
Don't
like
they all say
bargains.
that?
Is there a coupon?
Okay. Yeah, it's no coupon.
And I anticipate we'll get a number on the parking lot. You know, you've got 2 more regular meetings and the budget review meeting scheduled this calendar year. I hope we have a number to share with you, not next meeting after that.
Okay,
Alright.
all right.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks for your time.
thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief, for all your work in getting all this together.
And after I gave you a really hard time all at last meeting, like you had 2 huge fires, like within 3 days. Thank you for all that, by the way.
blame them on you then.
Yeah,
It's almost like a Stephen King novel.
I know.
So next on the agenda, Housing Trust Fund Policy. Melinda, good evening. Hi. So, do you just want to take off with it, or is Eric going to do an introduction?
I'll just say briefly, this has been this is one of the board's priority work items for the year, and Melinda's staff, the Housing Committee, they've done a lot of great work putting this draft together. Thought to bring it to you this evening is for initial discussion. Haven't had the town attorney look at it just yet. Want to get your feedback on the draft. If there's any work you'd like to task the Housing Committee with first to move this along towards a second draft for further review, and then I'd have legal take a look at it at that point. So,
Yeah, so in 2017, you established the Housing Trust Fund, and you adopted the Housing Trust Fund Ordinance, which you can think of as kind of a broad framework for a housing trust fund and establishing the purpose of the fund, and sort of a broad framework for how it is to be used. And then you can consider this draft policy to be a kind of a detailed roadmap for how to implement that trust fund policy. And so there is some money in the fund now, and we're expecting more monies to go into the fund with future payment in lieu for projects that are coming up as early as next spring. So the Housing Committee has been working on this with the help of CCRPC staff, and I also got some help from other municipalities who have established housing trust funds. So let's see, so mainly the purpose of the Housing Trust Fund is to promote and retain and create long-term affordable housing for very low and low-income households. And so the policy establishes a procedure for distributing these funds and a structure that includes several different possible programs that under which funds could be distributed. And roughly the procedure outlined in the draft kind of goes like this, that as part of the annual budgeting process, the Housing Committee would develop recommendations for the amount of funding to be dispersed during the next fiscal year and the recommended programs to which funding would be allocated. So the draft proposes, I think, 6 different programs. You need not disperse money under each of those programs in every year, like you can decide. Maybe we'll distribute monies for a couple of the programs and not others, depending on how much money is in the fund and what your priorities are. So anyway, if the Select Board approves actually getting this fund going and starting to distribute money and allocates a certain amount of that fund to disperse in the next fiscal year, the town would provide a notice of funding availability, post application materials, and receive applications for funding. which the Housing Committee would review on a rolling basis, and they would issue recommendations. The Housing Trust Fund ordinance establishes a position of fund manager, which also can be the town manager. The ordinance authorizes the select board to name the town manager as the fund manager. And so staff is recommending that award decisions be determined by the town manager, acting as the fund manager with the advisement of the Housing Committee. And then the ordinance also establishes an administrative manager, administrative agent to administer the fund management. It probably makes sense to have the position that I'm in to do that, as I'm already, kind of doing a lot of housing-related stuff. And I also work with the committee. Another consideration would be whether the town would want to partner with a financial institution to help administer the funds. That's certainly something you can consider doing, especially documenting, verifying loan documentation or, financial documentation, and processing applications, administering loans under the fund. So just to go through generally what the programs are under the funds, the proposed programs. There's a housing retention program, which would distribute grants to households at risk of losing their homes, their current homes, due to financial hardship. Just, some money to help keep people in their homes.
So I had a question about that. Is that anticipated that that's going to be a separate standalone house or condo or something that somebody owns title to, or would this also apply to apartments and rental and things like that?
It would definitely apply to apartments and rental housing.
Okay.
And probably would, it probably would be mostly used in those situations, I think.
Yep.
And then housing improvement program, where low-income owner occupants of single-family homes, multi-family homes, townhomes, could apply for money to rehabilitate, make rehabilitation repairs and/or accessibility improvements. And then the feasibility study program is primarily geared towards people who want to, say, build an ADU on their property, and they need money to have some feasibility work done, like maybe a wastewater capacity study or something of that nature, or some part of the planning and or permitting for that. And down payment assistance program. This would be similar to other established down payment assistance programs. And one of the requirements of this program is that applicants need to apply elsewhere for down payment assistance funding, and if they can't get any or enough funding, they could apply for this program. And this would be a grant that wouldn't be required to be paid back. And then the construction and rehabilitation program funding is really geared towards professional developers and large-scale affordable housing projects. And again, this would be kind of a last dollar funding source. So the assumption would be that other funding sources would be applied for and stacked along with this. And then finally, this last one, Affordable Housing Preservation Initiative. So this is just for possible projects that would fall outside the scope of these other areas and would further the ability to preserve existing affordable homes. Could be, I've listed a few ideas under this, but it could be things that we just haven't thought of that could be useful. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it.
I look at the study, it's a very good study. I like, helping people, save money in their homes and being able to stay in their homes and emergency funding. I like the idea of it, capital improvements, feasibility studies. If someone doesn't have the money to have it put an ADU on and they spend the money on a study, how are they gonna, I don't see them having money to do the capital improvements necessary afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it would be helpful for somebody, before they kind of go whole hog and put a lot of money into, building an ADU or getting a loan to build an ADU. They need some critical piece of information like, can my property support the additional wastewater that's needed, or something of that nature. And so this would provide funding to at least be able to make that initial, determination, to be able to help them to do that study so that they can then, if it is feasible, then, okay, maybe it's worth it for me to get a loan to build my ADU or get a grant under the state program, or, put some of my own money into it. And it is, under this program, we would ask the homeowner to pay for 25% of that study, just so they have some skin in the game, so to speak.
Sewage and water is pretty much straightforward, isn't it? When you have a house, you have a septic system, a 500-gallon tank, if it's rural, or if it's on the, the town water and sewer. You know what your septic capacity is. I mean, I think everybody knows pretty much what their septic capacity is based upon the permit on the original building.
Right, but this would be, what would it take to add additional capacity?
Well, contact the contractor and he'll tell you what it would cost to add an extra bedroom, for capacity.
He might not without getting paid. I mean, contractor or an engineer to give you that answer, they might require payment for that, I think.
Are you concerned that we're putting a lot of expense and hoops in the way of
Yes.
getting places built? Trying to make sure I understood what your concern is.
Thanks for clarifying that. It just seems like,
Yeah.
Or,
my house, I think it was 7 bedrooms, or 3 bathrooms. That's what it was permitted for, and that's it, If I gotta put a bigger tank in, and I gotta put a bigger leach field in, and
So I think we're just making comments, right? So I think
Yeah.
the thing that, maybe what you're asking, Mike, is like, could the committee go back and just rethink, are they putting unnecessary steps in the way of getting into this project? Is that, I didn't say that very well, but is that?
I don't ask questions very well either.
I mean, a
Sorry.
feasibility study wouldn't necessarily be something that was just required,
This would be, to clarify, this would not be required to
Yeah.
get additional monies it wouldn't be required by us to get additional funding under the Housing Trust Fund program. It's just one area, if somebody wants to investigate, what would it take to build an ADU on my property? It could involve getting a design done, or just a site plan, or just a general feasibility study. Could involve any of those things, and they just want some money to be able to do that, to kind of get them over that.
So it's not a requirement, it's
No.
just that, but if they do feel they need to do it, it would be eligible for money
Yeah.
from the fund.
If an outside entity, DRB or some other state entity has these requirements, then the Housing Trust Fund might be available to help pay for those things. But it's not adding, it's not adding requirements to the landowner.
I just wanna make sure we're putting the money to helping people stay in their homes first, It's you know, I guess my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the, you know, I appreciate that there's multiple program options here. Because I think that in addressing our housing crisis, it's not a one size fits all, and it needs to be a multifaceted approach. And so I'm really appreciative of the housing committee and your efforts as well, and really kind of addressing so many of these different pieces that we know that our low and extremely low income families are kind of facing right now in maintaining housing and finding housing. So I think personally it looks great. I'm really supportive of all of this. I wanted to get a sense of just obviously you don't know how much money is going to be in there at any given time, but how much are you thinking would be available, or what would the hope be, at least the initial year when we get this up and rolling?
I think that's a decision that the select board.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yep,
I
fair.
I think the inclusionary zoning on the new development off Old Stage Road is going to be contributing.
Yeah, I chatted with Melinda a little bit about, the fiscal policy piece of it, and for the board to think about is, with that fund, is there gonna be kind of a floor you wanna keep in that fund, and how much you wanna keep liquid, you wanna invest part of it, CDs or other notes. I think there's maybe 50 or 60,000 seeded in that fund over a few years, and then when we get the payment in lieu of for inclusionary zoning in the bylaw, there'll be some more funds coming in. I know there's some projects that are doing the payment in lieu of, so there'll be a more consistent stream in there as well, and the select board can always allocate funds into that. But kind of thinking the architecture of the fund, and this will be that component as well, how much you want to make sure you keep in there, how you may want to invest that, and the liquidity piece as well.
So on that, Melinda, just so I was reading it, and I thought I was following how it would work, but if you can just confirm. So the housing committee is going to develop a recommended work plan that includes the funding amount that they recommend be spent and which programs to be funded. Is that those 6 categories, those programs?
It would be some of those programs.
Okay.
Like some are more aspirational because they just take more money.
Sure.
So,
But
yeah.
I guess my question is that programs to be funded as it's used in the policy, it's not specific projects, it's
Right, it's just
categories.
right, correct.
Okay. And then the select board would approve annually the trust fund budget based on taking the recommendation of the trust people into account. All right. Okay, and then the other question I had is the awards that, so far it's the town manager that would be the fund manager?
So the town manager would make decisions about, sorry, Eric.
And it doesn't have to be.
About awarding funds. So the housing committee would make recommendations, we recommend that this person, get this amount, and then the town, Eric would make this final decision about that.
Okay, that brought up in section 4H, it says upon an award of funding, the applicant shall sign, no, that's not the right one, I'm sorry. I have to know my alphabet.
It's gonna be a shall versus
Yeah.
must discussion.
Yeah, awards recommended by the committee shall be approved by the fund manager. So, taken literally, shall would mean that,
Told you.
yeah,
Yeah,
that it's not discretionary, that if the committee says so, the fund manager salutes and just.
that's not how.
You don't need a fund manager.
So maybe it should be reworded, the fund manager shall have final decision on
Yeah, or
award
shall-
decisions or something like that,
Shall in his or her discretion approve.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I have two simple maybe and one question. So I think Ted just asked this question, but I want to make sure I understand it. If I have a property in my home that I am renting to a low-income person and I can't keep it in compliance, I could borrow money even though I'm the landlord?
keep in compliance, what do you,
With having somebody rent my property. I have an ADU I have low-income people renting from me, but it's out of compliance on something, and I need money to help
I
fix
see, yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Is there some, I mean, I guess,
so that would be probably under the housing improvement program, B.
probably, I would, it's probably a no-brainer because it would stay that way, but I would hate to loan money to somebody who fix it up and then rents it to somebody who's no longer low. It's nice enough property,
Yeah.
they don't let,
Yeah.
it's no longer low-income property, so there's something about that I'm just wondering if.
Enforcement.
Sure.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good catch.
The housing committee, as far as, they were very clear that, they wanted to either, that they didn't want to subsidize homes that were not affordable.
Mhm.
So there's a provision, that just says recipients of funding have the option to either deed restrict the home to be perpetually affordable, so if you get money to fix up the non-compliant
Mhm.
ADU or whatever, or to pay back the funding adjusted for inflation upon sale or refinancing of the home. So either,
That's yeah.
and most people are gonna
It's a
choose
good
the
catch,
second
but they
option,
caught it before I did.
but at least that way the money is getting back into the fund eventually.
And the other two are just are simpler ones, I think, but, or not, because we've already thought of these two. When I was seeing the budget, as part of the annual budget drafting process, I was thinking, look, does this really need to be part of the annual budget? It's a standalone fund, it's not operating budget, it's not voted on. I hate it when we put processes in place that really have no value add. So I don't need to see it as part of the budget. If it's important because we're doing an annual approval of the total amount, when you said that, Ted, it's like, oh, that might make sense. You could consider maybe doing it January 1st, or if we're just trying to get it out of the
Yeah, that's
budget.
good.
I was wondering if it needed to be done at all. It seems like we have a fund, and as opportunistically things become available,
Right.
Eric can approve them, but I can see that as part of if the select board's uncomfortable delegating the entire value of the fund for Eric to, we want to.
Good for separation.
Right, and if there's a policy in place for, there will always remain a certain balance or a certain, whatever, then, yeah, we don't necessarily have to have our hands in that.
Could think about something where, the allocation decision is made in the springtime, maybe in April or May. So conceivably, if the board wants to put some additional transfer in the general fund, it's approved at town meeting, wait the 30 days after town meeting, and then April or May, you have a housing trust budget amount to approve, then that's effective for July 1st for that. We could chunk it.
And I wouldn't want them to say like, well, our budget is to do 3 from column A and 2 from column B, and then they have to come back and get approval because they got another opportunity that was different. I wouldn't want that, so.
But I don't think
It's kind of a-
they don't have to.
A lump sum available for
Yeah,
the
lump
year.
sum.
Yeah.
And the only other one is, this is just like, what we're I don't know, we're doing our other policies, but there's a lot of, in the policy, like up to 20,000 or up to 15,000, or sometimes, at least on school board policies, those kind of things we don't put in the policy, because then when you want to change it, we have to warn an updated policy. Unless we don't,
Well,
in this case.
I don't think we have to warn policy changes, ordinances.
For policy, yes.
We do.
The policy of the select board, so it would be your policy.
But I mean, we don't have to have a hearing on it and.
No, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Not a public, you wouldn't need to have a public hearing necessarily, you wouldn't have to wait the 30 days for effectiveness, but it'd have to be an action of the select board to amend it.
So if they just, at some point, the Housing Trust Fund wanted to change one of the numbers, they were finding that we capped it at 10, but it was always 12, so they'd like to make it 15 or something. It wouldn't be that big a problem for them to come back and ask.
No, probably be a relatively quick discussion. Anticipating.
Okay.
This doesn't necessarily pertain to how the money is spent, but given the kind of sensitive nature of the information that folks will be providing to through the application process, I assume that there's some safeguards to protect the privacy and dignity of these folks as much as possible. Obviously, you know, that they're receiving, you know, public funds, and this is a matter of public record, but as much as we can, you know.
Yeah, I put something to that effect under 4L, it's like the last paragraph of the procedure section,
Okay.
just talking about confidentiality.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did a good job filling a lot of this in here. There's a lot, it answers a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I just, two very minor comments on this, on the section 4 on page 2, G and H, it talks about days of responding. It should, I think, in order to make it clear, either work days or calendar days, on both of those.
Okay, yeah.
I look forward to having enough money to actually do this.
We talked about for a long time by the.
And a very, very major thing, I saw that Burlington, South Burlington Metropolitan Statistical Area, South Burlington, the S is not capitalized.
I'm shocked that Terry and I did
I know,
not have that
you know,
actually.
honest to God, I was waiting, and I was gonna say, I knew he was gonna catch that.
I think I will make that correction.
Yeah, that almost made me think the whole thing is not worth it.
That was a gene catch.
No, I don't do letters, it's numbers.
Yeah.
So when do we come back on this, another, by the end of the year, or?
Yeah, I think what I'll the town attorney take a look at it, and then we'll bring a final draft back for your consideration for approval. I anticipate, a discussion of allocating any additional monies from the general fund. It's not something that will occur this fiscal year discussion, but we have funding there, we have the payment in lieu of, so you adopt this policy, we can look at a springtime budget approval for that initial amount to allocate in FY26.
Okay.
I want to commend you and the housing committee, because I think that this is the first time that we've had all these questions, and then they have been answered within the very document.
Yeah.
So, that is very impressive, thank you.
Takes
Thank
all
you,
the fun
Melinda.
out of being on the select board, but,
Thanks, Melinda.
yeah, thanks, committee, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
meetings.
So next on the agenda, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission update, and the esteemed Mr. Baker. Good evening.
I don't know about that. Am I muted?
No, you're good.
No?
Okay, I'm on.
Red is good.
Thank you for the time, and appreciate all the good work that you're doing here. So, this is really my annual customer service visit with you all, and just to see how we're doing. You got a report from us in your packet. I'll kind of review that very briefly and pause a few times to see if you have any feedback or questions for me. The first page of the report gives you some background on the Regional Planning Commission and our board, a little bit of how we leverage municipal funding to bring in, well, in this past year, it was about $500,000 or $600,000 of local funds brought in, about $5.5 million of federal and state funds into the county. And then your reps on our board and committees are down at the bottom of that first page. Thank you very much for Andy and Karen for stepping up on our board, and your staff for participating actively in our committees. Appreciate all that. And Karen, I think, is kind of plugged in.
Yeah, she's on Zoom.
Yeah, so she is feeling a little under the weather tonight and couldn't be here in person, but she wanted to be here. So I'll convey that. Thank you. The second page and onto the third are the specific things that we did with the town last fiscal year. I'm not going to read every single one of these, but I'll touch on just a few of them. Talking about supportive or housing supportive bylaws and brownfields and water quality. And then a bunch of different things under technical assistance, including kind of the beginning of your town plan process, energy things, micro transit, safety, intersection work, and traffic counts, et cetera. Happy to take any questions on or feedback on any of those services we provided to the town last fiscal year. Hopefully it met your needs as far as you know.
I'm sure it's a lot of like a report or a report back on the UPWP projects. Or They
Yep.
make up a lot of this list here.
Yep, absolutely.
The board approves those every January.
Oh, good. Yeah, and yeah, this is, and actually I'll get to that in one sec. The next section on the third page, although it says 2 on the bottom, is the projects that you have in our transportation improvement program, which mirror the projects that are in the state's transportation capital program, which you have, well, quite a number of projects. I don't know, good and bad, right? So
I asked you last year if you actually had time to do work for anybody else, or? it's just-
No, it's just you. Just, we're changing our name soon, the Williston Regional. No, thank you. And I honestly, yeah, we've been pretty busy, and we do try to, help everybody as much as we can. And you're fortunate, you have a strong staff, so you're able, a lot of this is really due to your staff, and not so much us. We help a little bit. Skipping to the next page, the work program. There's a little table at the top of the fourth page, it says number 3 at the bottom, about the projects you have in this current fiscal year work program. And it's probably a good time for me to, just kind of give you that annual reminder that around Thanksgiving time, we'll send the town, mostly the town staff, the application for next year's funding cycle. I think we're all pretty used to that cycle now, so I'm sure the staff is probably already thinking about things that they want help with for FY '26 as time flies along here. And there's a few things that we're working on with you now, updated Williston Road scoping and Brownell Marshall Ave intersection scoping. We're helping Lake Iroquois Rec District with a grant that they got from EPA there, and a safety audit on Oak Hill Road. So, and also the stormwater work. So hopefully those things are ongoing now, or have started up and are going well so far. Sorry, I'm just going to look and see if any questions or issues pop up yet.
I live on Oak Hill Road. You said a safety audit on Oak Hill Road. I was just wondering what that was about.
Where did Bruce go? So pretty much the extent of my knowledge is what's written here. And I know, I think we have 2 or 3 engineers on staff, so I think they were working with the town staff. We might have had a meeting recently on this.
They had a kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago, and that's looking, analyzing that road's safety. We get a lot of feedback about multimodal use on that road, and it has its challenges, just where it's an older road and the width that it is, and the speed there.
And a whole bunch of brand-new drivers driving on it all the time.
Yeah. So that work, we'll be working with stakeholders to examine that, and there may be some recommendations. Large scale, making the road wider is a very expensive endeavor. The town's taken that up in the past, prior years.
Recently, about 7 a.m., it was, dark, and it was foggy. And I don't know if it was the high school or the college, but they left off a whole busload of kids on the cross-country skiing, and they were going down that road.
Wow.
Oak Hill?
Yeah,
Jeez.
right from Oak View Trail Parkhead. I was up there working, at first light, and I see them, about, I don't know, dozen kids all on the skis in the road, and the traffic is bumper to bumper, 60 miles an hour. Foggy and dark.
It's UVM, to go around that, around South Road, Oak Hill, that's
I was gonna say, it wasn't the high school.
Oh, the dorks.
Wow, it just blew me away.
Yeah, hope everybody's being safe out there.
Make a note of that one.
The last section of the report has a bunch of activities that we undertake that are more regional in nature, so not with regard to any specific municipality. We started work on our regional plan, which I want to get into in a little bit more detail after I get through this report. Working on public engagement and equity issues, housing. Credit to you for the work that's going, what you just talked about. Energy planning, walking, biking, clean water. So happy to take any questions or feedback on any of those. Yeah, the CUD, the Communications Union District. While I have the chance, I'll give a lot of credit to your rep on the CUD board. Michael Vance has been a huge positive force on that board. So I'm hoping you reappoint him. And we're at the point where we really need him. We're just about to get into implementation. So, but thank you for having him appointed on that board. But yeah, any feedback or questions on any of those items?
Thank you for keeping housing on the forefront.
Oh, yeah, you might have seen we had the Building Homes Together, a little press event last week. Yeah, just trying to, even though, the legislature may make some action, like we haven't solved that issue by any stretch of the imagination, so more work to be done then. And kind of speaking of that, some of the changes that happened in the last session, there's an attachment to this report called a summary of Act 181, which was that Act 250 bill that got passed this session. This is not a summary of the whole bill, which was like 170 pages. This is kind of a slice summary from kind of an RPC perspective of some of the things that are required of RPCs that we're starting to, I think this is really the start of us giving you a heads up that we're going to engage in some work. We're hoping to engage the town in that work over the coming months, particularly over the next 6 to 9 months. But they've really shifted Act 250 from just how many units or how many acres to more of a location-based jurisdiction philosophy. They put in some interim exemptions that went into effect July 1. But then the law requires the RPCs to really update our land use maps that are part of our regional plan, just like you have a land use map that guides your zoning and your town plan. Of course, we don't have the power to zone, so this is more guidance, but I think the state kind of decided to let's have Act 250 be more of an instrument to help implement our plans, or maybe not have it get in the way of implementing, and I'm using ours in the broadest way possible. And so we're going to be working on updating our land use map. It's also, there's some different procedure that's called out here. Previously, the Regional Planning Commission adopted the regional plan, and that was kind of the end of the process. Now the regional plan is going to go to this land use review board, and that is really what is going to be kind of the state giving its approval to say, okay, yeah, those areas that you identified in that map are exempt from Act 250, or maybe it's partially exempt. There's more nuances in there that I could happy to answer questions, but part of it, they wanted us to do a lot of engagement with the municipalities, also to try to engage environmental justice communities, and there's a whole other piece of statute that defines what those are. And not only are we working on maps, but also the administration is supposed to publish housing targets for the state, for the regions. We're then tasked with working with our municipalities to break those housing targets, or I think of them more as housing goals, out to each municipality. So, but it may at least be a number that we're all shooting for, regionally, town-wise, that may put us more on the same path of what we're trying to get towards.
Just a clarifying question.
Yeah.
These growth areas and things, I remember Matt came and we were talking about the village area, or getting the right
The designations.
designations.
Yeah.
So it won't be the municipality that does it, but the Regional Planning Commission?
Well,
Together.
yeah, thank you. Previously, the municipality made a request to what was the downtown board, and that board and the staff from the Department of Community Development kind of, might have wrestled with the town a little bit about the map, and it got approved at that state board. There was a lot of frustration that came. The legislature asked that department to also look at that designation program and how that could work better. And so, thank you for bringing that up, actually, because one of the pieces the legislature said not only will the regional plan maps be used for Act 250 jurisdiction, but also to stop negotiating with that state department, but let's negotiate locally, decide where we want the village center to be, to get those, you know, there's tax credit program incentives that are there. So we jointly will be able to have more ability to control where those locations are, those centers. And then there's also the neighborhood designation, neighborhood development area, that will also be part of it. So, you know, kind of the commercial core, you have a village center here. I think we're kind of trying to think about what does the growth center, you know, we want to kind of incorporate that. You know, you have a pretty large growth center, you know, relatively speaking statewide. And so, but we'll, you know, try to include all that in here so that, you know, we're aligned with what you're trying to accomplish, and then Act 250 is helping to support it, you know, by not getting in the way largely.
Also interesting, because I think my first thought was that's great, because we already are used to working with you and your team, and that would be collaborative and much better than sending it off to some board at the state. But I do also see there could be a tension, which.
Yeah, and so there is statutory language, you know, that our plan has to comply with. So I think that's another reason I'm here, is like, heads up, you know, I don't know, there may be, I've been calling them, there may be some little rubs that we got to kind of work through. But yeah, I hope we're all coming to the table in the spirit of collaboration and, you know, problem solving. You know, I think
Same goals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I expect we'll work those out. I also, and this is maybe a little political statement, but, you know, there was an interesting shift, you know, in our state legislature that happened yesterday. And, you know, there may be, I think one of the opportunities as we get into this in the next few months is if we do find one of those rubs there, it may be like, oh, maybe we could clarify something in statute or do a little bit of shift. So that's also very much on my mind, because, you know, this is a concept that was, you know, hashed out in the legislature. Now we're going to test it out. Inevitably, we're going to find some things that work good and some things that could be improved. So I'm at least optimistic that there may be, you know, an even more receptive. I think the legislature the last couple of years has been, you know, very focused on the housing issue, but maybe even more so, you know, in this next iteration here. I don't know. Hopefully that didn't come off as too weird. Okay. Or part of the, that was a nonpartisan
Statement of
commentary.
And it broke your flow. You probably remember where you were. Sorry.
And so the last page there kind of has a little table. We're just kind of, this is, phase one was kind of internal work that we started over the last couple months. This is phase two. We're kind of just starting to inform the select boards. Want to make sure you're all aware that this process is coming up. And yeah, I think we've been talking to your planning staff, and we want to make sure, like, it's probably more with the planning commission in the next few months, but ultimately, and if we'll also be kind of asking for any advice about people that we should engage with or groups within town to, like, get some more perspectives that maybe don't always come out to public meetings. So, you know, the legislature gave us some resources to be able to do some more engagement and work and analysis around this. We have to look at environmental benefits and burdens of these plans, which is something new. We're not quite sure how that will work out, but maybe there'll be some interesting information comes out of that. When we get to the final map, so somewhere between, probably in phase 5 there, we'll be bringing you back a map. The legislation right now, the statute does require an affirmative action of the select board to say that you want Act 250 exemption in certain areas or not. And so just a heads up that there will be a vote to be, so we'll all be very transparent about where those areas are. And the legislature, I think, was concerned, you know, in smaller towns, they, you know, may not have the staff to really fully implement their zoning, or maybe like having Act 250 kind of back them up in terms of reviewing development you have a, very strong staff and zoning regulations here, so I expect you're going to be in a place where you can embrace those exemptions. And, yeah, so that's, heads up is really my message here. Any
You do
questions?
great work on a lot of different things here, Vermont culverts and everything.
Yeah.
I just would like to, I just have to put my 2 cents in on the Route 2 to Butternut Oak Hill Road safety. I think it should be Willowbrook, because I own a farm and I drive tractors on the road on a 1 mile straightaway. Cars are doing 80, 90 miles an hour all the time.
And that's definitely the kind of thing, if the town wants to ask us to, kind of help do a safety study or something of the road, or,
I mean, I'll drive a tractor and a wagon at 8 o'clock in the morning back and forth between Butternut and Willowbrook. I bet you that would get some attention in a hurry.
the traffic calming, yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I live on a 1 mile straightaway.
Yeah, well, I can always pass it on the PD too, to be aware for
Speed card.
targeted patrols.
The cars go through there like you wouldn't believe, I mean, this afternoon I was out there, a car went by doing at least 90.
Yeah, and we was talking about the 3 E's when we're talking about traffic safety. There's education, there's enforcement, and then there's engineering. So, we can, and we're typically, when we're doing a safety study, we're kind of looking at all 3. Do we need, more signage or something in terms of education? Having police enforcement is always helpful. A lot of towns are doing those little flash speed signs, to at least, that's part of the education piece, right? Like, at least let the driver know how fast they're going. If they see 80, you would think that they would slow down. And then, engineering is kind of like the more expensive solution, where you're changing some of the design things, or, in a real local street, you can do things like speed humps and things like that, but there are engineering solutions also.
Brown's Terrace Road or something in Jericho has different speed things they have, to
Yep.
slow cars down.
Yep.
I'm on a tractor and I try to go 100 feet down the road and there's a car a half mile away. I have trouble making that 100, 200 feet,
You gotta soup up that tractor.
Yeah, you're probably just not going fast enough.
15 miles an hour is all I can go.
Yeah, I think we're, so, yeah, thank you for any feedback, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Had a few people tell me I gotta do something. I gotta say something,
Have a good
And our
night.
rep, Karen Peterson, sends her gratitude to serve on the board and thanks the select board members for their service and the town staff. And she's honored for being able to represent the town. So
Great.
I
Feel
wanna
better?
pass that on.
Thank you, Karen and Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
So next on the agenda is zoning violation settlement, 1250 South Road.
So this is, Select Board's asked to consider a settlement agreement for a zoning violation at 1250 South Road for a mobile home that's in the setback, of the 50-foot setback, in an RV that's been occupied for more days than allowed under zoning. In this agreement, there's dates set for administrative permit application submission that conforms with zoning for the mobile home that's in the setback, and sets limits of time of occupancy for the RV in line with town zoning. Nothing's changed since the last time the board saw this. The property owners have agreed to it and signed off on it. The board wishes to approve it. There's a motion suggested to authorize the manager to sign it.
Questions for Eric? Proposed motion?
You wanna do it? I'll second it, you go ahead.
All right, I move to authorize the town manager to enter into a settlement agreement with Waldo and Mary Seipel to resolve a zoning violation at 1250 South Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. Motion carries. Okay. Next, volunteer reappointment. Eric?
As Charlie alluded to, the CCCUD, the Chittenden County Communications Union District, runs on a calendar year, and our Representative Mike Vance is up for reappointment. They've now changed it to 2-year terms instead of 1. Myself and Aaron Dickinson serve as your alternates on that regional board. For your consideration, a motion for reappointment this evening.
Questions for Eric?
I know we've had some updates, but just, it's gone back and forth between, there was a bit of a stalwart for a while, and now some progress is being made. If you could just, do you have a quick, snapshot of where they're at?
I think the latest I've read, there's been some, I think it was the BEAD was the acronym funding release, so I know that, I think we've been able, CUD's been able to unlock some of that funding, but I'll have to get just a little more thorough update of
Okay.
where the next
Would-
steps
yeah,
are.
would
but-
love
But it's
An
progressing.
update, yeah, soon, okay.
Other questions or
Nope,
proposed motion?
I'll move to reappoint Michael Vance as Williston representative to the Chittenden Communications Union District and Eric Wells and Aaron Dickinson as alternative representatives for a 2-year term through December 30th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Managers report.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, it's not in my written report, but we received the Q1 local option tax report, I think it was last Friday. Yeah, that seems about right. Came in, so let me pull it up here. There we go, had it open. So the first quarter, what we retain is just over $1 million, 1,006,000. We budgeted 4.1 or so for the year, so through one quarter, we're on track for how we budgeted it. I wanted to highlight, I'll send out the report as I usually do, a written copy, but just for the, make the board just aware of when we look at these, state statute requires that the state retains 30% of the local option tax levy, and that goes into the state pilot fund. To give you an idea.
The what fund?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Oh, okay.
The state uses that to then give back to towns.
Sure.
As those pieces. So if you look at the gross amount of this quarter, it was $1.56 million in local option tax receipts. So after the state retains the 30% plus a $36,000 fee, that's when the town gets left with a 1.06 million. So of that quarter, the local option tax, the state retains over $500,000 for one quarter. So for the whole year, it's usually over $2 million for local option tax revenue for Williston. As part of VLCT's legislative platform for next session, I chatted with them a little bit about this, is looking at that 70-30 split and seeing if there may be some lobbying effort towards shifting that formula slightly.
Lots of luck.
We get the conversation going. But, if there was a shift there, that means for Williston is retaining more of those local option tax dollars, and I'll likely be volunteering to testify in the line. I think talk to Town of Stowe as well, as they have a similar volume like we do that goes under that current statute. But just the board is aware that some of the mechanics of the volume of funds that the town brings in, and we still retain quite a bit, but 30% to the state pilot fund is a significant amount of money.
Especially since that number was probably set when this was all new and only a few towns were participating, so this is just gonna be a boom to the state.
Yeah,
Now that
we've had
so many have,
late 90s or so.
That was set way back when it was first allowed.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A handful of, it was relatively unusual
Yeah.
to do it, so.
Yeah.
And so the payment in lieu of taxes fund it goes into? Is that what-
Yeah, there's a statewide fund. I was rereading the statute the other day thinking about
I was
this.
gonna say, has anybody come back to us? That's the question.
Yeah, some
Some.
does. I think there's a revenue line item for the rest areas, and there's some state-owned buildings in town, but it's nowhere near that amount of money, I'll say. Maybe it's 150, 200,000 a year. But
I think it'd be important too if the legislator were to look into being able to identify whether it's a regional tax or an internet tax, you know? I mean, this is gonna come up more and more.
yeah, they base it all on point of delivery, and there was a Supreme Court case, Wayfair v. South Dakota, a few years ago that let retain those based on point of delivery. But yeah, it's been something other towns have talked about. The tax department keeps that proprietary, so what we get is this just number every quarter. And
Landlords know what it is. You talk to Jeff Davis, he knows exactly what it is. You talk to the new owners of the town marketplace, they know what it is.
Or for their particular business, I imagine.
Right, so the data is there, we just don't have access to it.
Yep.
You know, if the data's there, we should be able to have access to it.
Yep. Yeah, made that point in the legislature last year.
Any landlord knows it. I don't know.
Bring that-
Doesn't seem right.
It's still private data.
Landlord knows it.
He's a private guy. I mean, it's his
With it-
business, right? It's not, we're not, no, businesses aren't required to give us their information.
So then the legislator can, I don't know.
There was some talk of it last session, but it didn't advance. But just to share that with the board. Then I also, just thinking ahead, Shirley and I are getting into the bulk of the budget development right now. I'm really focused on operating the next couple of weeks. And I previewed for the board just kind of the pressures we're going to face with payroll and benefits component of that. And as I start to meet with departments next week, to see what the operational pressures and needs are. Understanding that the community didn't support the bond last night, and there's just understanding the community's feedback on spending right now and trying to think about that informing the budget, and that I have your feedback to look for a lean budget and thinking about what that means for services. But if the board had any additional direction or feedback for me, this is the time where I'll be drafting those numbers. But I'm kind of taking the community's feedback at this point. I shared it with staff today. This advice is going to be likely need to be a very lean budget year, and my approach would be to deliver a number the best I can and kind of flag things that I've likely would need to reduce off the top, and then we're not going to be able to address all the needs, I know, but there'll still be needs there and pressure there, but I'll make the board fully aware of those, and those are your decisions to make on your budget before it goes to town meeting.
I think lean is good, unfortunately.
I think the voters have spoken very, very loud.
And then on budget, just a reminder, we've set the budget review day for Saturday, December 7th, similar to last year. So I think we did like a 9 o'clock start. Does that sound familiar? Is that a good time still?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think we wrapped up pretty much on schedule. I think we wrapped up by 3 or 4 o'clock. So I'll dust off my schedule from last year and work with departments on timing for everyone's schedules.
The real question we all have is, will there be cookies?
We can make that happen.
Thank you, Greta. Thank you.
Write it down right now.
So December 7th would probably be what time, 9 AM?
Yeah, we'll start at 9 o'clock, it sounds like. We'll have a lunch break and
That's Christmas tree cuttings, so I gotta get.
Are you cutting Christmas? Conversation for another time.
I'll probably be here at the front door waiting for you to open the door.
I have a key, so you have a key?
And just to thank community members for their generous donations. I had a drive for a temporary shelter that stood up, and I brought a number of items over today and had a nice tour of the space from the staff there, and they've done a really nice job. And just say it's been well set up. And
My understanding there are currently at least 2 families who have occupied.
yeah, I think there may be 4 now,
4.
with another one
Okay.
potentially coming, but they've done a really nice
Yeah.
job in the space, and they're really grateful to the community for their generosity.
Who's operating the shelter? Is it the state is operating themselves?
Yep, the state is, and they're some third-party agency helping with some programming, but primarily state. Staff 24/7.
And last week, or actually I think it was the week before, I was at the Montpelier for a day roving capital thing that the governor does. And at the end, he actually called out Williston and thanked us for basically not fighting the state on the homeless shelter. Actually, he thanked me, and I said, well, we have a really good town manager. And he said, well, you do, but you also have a really good select board because we get a lot of resistance for things like that across the state, and we didn't get any from Williston. So I wanted to share that, pass that along. So, okay.
So I have a manager's report.
Okay. Other business? Is there any other business?
Oh, there it is. A submission today of a catering permit. It would be it's an event at the pool at Allen Pools. So this just came in today, sir. It's a Allen Pool Chamber Mixer, Cottonwood Drive, beer and wine, tomorrow. Sometime. Staff has no concerns with
All
that.
right. Okay.
You'd have to
No
go
water
shop.
in pools, right?
No water. I said to Sarah, it sounds like a pool party to me. No water in the pools.
If there are no questions, is there a motion?
So moved
Okay,
to
second.
approve it.
Second, anybody?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. You guys have it? Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Final thoughts on items from the meeting?
I just thought we should probably acknowledge that Sarah Mason did an awesome job yesterday, getting almost 2,000 people through the polls pretty smoothly, so and then, of course, all the other volunteers and everybody who were there. I was there for several hours, and just the courtesy that was extended while holding to the rules was just phenomenal to watch, and so we're very lucky in that way to have great people
That's
manning
fair.
our elections here.
Agreed, yeah. You folks have stayed through the whole meeting. I hope you weren't thinking that we were gonna be talking about your issue tonight.
No,
okay.
not at all. I just want to start getting involved, start understanding.
Okay.
myself, and this was
Well.
the first step.
Great, okay, you're welcome, obviously, anytime, but it's,
I'll be here.
okay, all right, okay.
Who wouldn't say that after such a great meeting?
Yeah, yeah, well, we're kind of famous for
Second
that.
that.
Okay, so, then there is an anticipated executive session, and a proposed motion.
I'll move to find that premature public knowledge regarding a labor relations agreement with employees would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage, and further move that we enter an executive session to discuss a labor relations agreement with employees under Title I, Sections 313A1B of the Vermont statutes, and invite Fire Chief Aaron Collette and Town Manager Eric Wells to join the discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that, we will be in executive session, and we are not coming back to public session after that, so that will conclude the public portion of the meeting. Thank you.
You can tell I cut wood today, I was tired, so I had 2 cups of coffee before the